So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Sustainable Celebrations live lesson. It's lovely to have you here with us this afternoon. If you wouldn't mind, please adding your school name and class to the chat, just so that we know who we've got joining us, and to make sure you can see and hear me okay, that would be lovely. So, like I said, welcome to our live lesson on sustainable celebrations. We're really excited to be doing this lesson this afternoon. Just before you get started, make sure you've got a white paper or a whiteboard to hand and a pencil or pen, just in case you need to write anything down during the lesson, make notes for later. So this afternoon, we're going to learn how to get started with planning a celebration, just any celebration. We're going to think about how we can use our values when we're planning a celebration, and we're going to try and think about what we can do to make our celebrations better for the planet. So to get started, it would be lovely to know what celebration you are planning. So those of you joining us, it would be great to know if you are planning a celebration currently, what kind of celebration are you planning, or are you just wanting ideas for a general celebration? Perhaps we've got maybe an end of year celebration that we might be planning. So a lot of schools are planning their end of year celebrations just now. It's a great time to have a celebration. Hopefully the weather is usually good as well, which means we can sometimes get outside. So maybe end of year celebrations, or maybe you just want some ideas for any celebration that you're planning. So let's do some basics, the real basics if you're planning a celebration. What do you need for a celebration? What are the things that we need? If we're going to hold a celebration, what are the kind of basics that we want to think about? Any thoughts? What kind of things do you think about? Okay, we want to do the celebration. Maybe it's an end of year or a birthday party, has been suggested in the chat. So we need food. Yeah, always good to have food. That's my favorite bit of any celebration. Maybe decorations. Yep, that's a really good one. Might want to make our space look really nice, and there's lots of different ways we can do that. So we need some food, some decorations. Maybe we need a place to hold the celebration. So you might be having a celebration in your school, but you might want to think about where in your school you're going to hold it. And think about maybe who's going to be invited and what you're going to do during your celebration. Brilliant. So before we get into the details of kind of what we're going to plan, how we're going to plan it, we might think about what values we want to celebrate. So with any celebration that we're having, it's a great idea to kind of incorporate values, partly because they're what make us who we are, but also because it can be a really good way to think about trying to make a celebration better for the planet. If we have our basic values in mind, then every decision we have to make, we can just think about those values and act in a way that's in line with them. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by a value, maybe your school has some values. So lots of schools have their own school values. So if your school does have values, maybe you could try and see if you can remember them right now. So you could write them down or you could share them in the chat. What values has your school got? What are your school values? So someone in the chat suggesting would like to celebrate everything that's been done for our work towards sustainability. So maybe sustainability is one of your core values. So value is like your core beliefs and principles that guide how you behave, and everyone will have slightly different values depending on who you are. But yeah, for example, if you value our environment, would try and behave in a way that's kind to our environment. So let's just give you some more examples if you're not quite sure. So here's some examples of values that could relate to what you want your celebration to be about. So this could be your school values, like I mentioned earlier, or you might have some values from the environmental work that you've done this year. So obvious ones might be things like caring for the environment or caring for nature. If that's something that you really value, then maybe think about how you can put that into your celebration. Or there might be things like community and teamwork that you've learned across the year that you want to celebrate. Or you maybe even things like creativity. There's loads on this list just to give you some examples. Curiosity, faith, hope, and also fun. So these are all values. So have a look at that list, but also think about your school values. And maybe just now, write down 2 or 3 values that you want to celebrate as part of your celebration, that makes part of who you are and part of who your school or class is. And whenever you're trying to make a decision about your celebration, you can look back at these values and think, okay, so we need to decide about this. For example, if we're trying to decide who are we going to invite to our celebration, if one of your values is community or friendship, you might want to think about inviting community members to your celebration, so it can help to guide you. So we've got some of the chat saying teamwork and community for sure. So if that's your values, think about how you can incorporate those into your celebration planning. So some very, very basics in terms of planning our celebration. So we've said a little bit about what we need already, but let's just get back to a couple of the basics and then we'll go on to look at how we can make things a bit more planet friendly. So 3 things that we need to think about when we're starting to plan a celebration. Big one, when? What date are we going to hold the celebration? And obviously that's just entirely up to you as to when works best for you and your school. Where? Where are you going to hold the celebration? Now, my favourite types of celebrations are ones that happen outdoors. Now, it does depend on the time of year and the weather. We've been having some beautiful weather recently, but it might go a bit rainy as it is Scotland. So we maybe want to think about having a backup in case if we do plan to have it outside, just in case the Scottish weather intervenes. But also when we're thinking about where, think about how your guests are going to get there. So can they use active travel or public transport to get to wherever you're having your celebration, particularly if it's not in your school? Because if we can allow people to travel in a sustainable way, that's really good. So when, where, and also who. Who's going to come to your celebration? Think about who you want to celebrate with. Like I said before, if you've got a value of community, maybe you want to invite community members. Think about who you're grateful to, maybe people who've helped you in the year. Also, maybe people you want to develop closer links with. You might want to invite local elected members, so members of Parliament, members of the Scottish Parliament, council members, who might to show what you've been up to. And it's always great to involve the local community where you can. And when you are inviting people, don't forget, try and make environmentally friendly invites. So either maybe reuse paper or try and use online methods of inviting people. And when we're thinking about who as well, don't forget about who's going to help. So try and get lots of people involved in all stages of planning, get everybody involved. Don't just leave it all on one person to organize things. You can get your families to help as well and your community if possible. And try and help each other out to plan your celebration. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to go through a few of the different aspects of our celebration, and we're going to think about how we can make them more planet friendly. So we'll start with a very simple one, decorations and displays. So think about what kind of decorations you might want at your celebration, and remember your values when you're thinking about what kind of decorations you want. So does anybody have any ideas? What kind of decorations would they like to have at their celebration? Or any ideas for what you would like to do? Oh, someone's mentioned bunting, which is always a very pretty way of decorating places. Think about displays as well. What could you display? Collages. Now, collages are a great idea and they're a really wonderful way to share your work. So let's just have a look at a few examples of things we could use to decorate. So someone's also mentioned displays of work we've done in the past. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea, particularly if you're doing something for maybe an eco-school celebration or a celebration of some other project that you've done in the year. Have a big display up of some of the work that you've done so everyone can see what you've been up to. So put all these lovely displays out. You can do things like fabric bunting. So again, thinking about what if we are using decorations, so rather than just displays of the work that you've done, try and think about what's involved in that. So fabric bunting is great because you can make it yourself, you can make it from scraps of fabric, and it can be reused again and again and again. So generally avoid plastic where possible and try and make your decorations from recyclable materials and make them reusable so you can keep using your decorations again and again. And then just have lots of displays of what work you've been doing, lots of that displays of all the things you've been doing during the year, because that's what people love to see. And don't forget that you can have displays outside. So that picture in the bottom right corner, you could maybe make a natural display, natural artwork using natural materials, again, that can just be kind of recycled at the end of things. So there's lots of lovely things that you can do without having to buy lots of plasticky decorations and things. So now we come to my favorite part of a celebration, which is the food. Now, you don't have to have food at your celebration. You might choose not to, but it is a really important part of lots of celebrations. And when you're planning your food, we recommend that you follow the principles of our One Planet Picnic. And that's because a One Planet Picnic is good for you and it's also good for the planet. So we want to try and have both. We want to have lovely, tasty food that's good for us and nourishes us, and also food that's helping the planet at the same time. So there are a few One Planet Picnic principles that you can follow. Now, you don't need to follow all of these. They're just some ideas to help make the food at your celebration better for you and the planet. So they're not set in stone. They're just some basic guidelines that you can choose from to help you plan your food at your celebration. So here are the One Planet Picnic principles. So we've got basically trying to buy seasonal and local food so that's got low carbon, so low greenhouse gases released from its production. Trying to have food that's maybe more organically grown, more ethically traded. I'm going to go through all these in a bit more detail in a second. Less packaging waste and also less food waste. So that's the principles we want to follow. So let's have a look at that. So firstly, we want to try and include food that's maybe in season and see if you can get some local producers involved in so that your food comes from a local place and has fewer food miles. Now, when I say in season, does anybody know what we mean by food that's in season? What does that actually mean? Any ideas? So food that's been grown around the time you're eating it. So quite a lot of food maybe has been grown like that. But yeah, as in not strawberries in January, that's a really good example. So we want to think about food that naturally grows at the time that you're eating it. So when the fruit is ripe and ready to be harvested, that's naturally the time of year that would happen for the place that it's being grown in. So that will vary across the world because different places across the world have different climates and different seasonalities for when food is ready. But particularly if you're buying food that's grown in this country, you want to think about, right, what would be naturally grown at this time of year? Because if we're trying to grow food at an unnatural time of year, that ends up using a lot of energy, which doesn't go for, which we want to avoid. So let's just have a practice and see if we can match the food to the season. So here are 4 foods that we commonly have for fruits and vegetables. So strawberries, apples, parsnips, and leeks. And can you match the food to the season? So which one of these would we find to be ripe and ready naturally in the spring? Which one in the summer? Which one in the autumn? And which one in the winter? So take a couple of minutes to have a think about that. You could maybe write them down, write spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and then match which of these fruits and vegetables, so strawberries, apples, parsnips, and leeks, match to that season of the year. So I'll give you a minute or so to have a think. We've got a couple of suggestions coming in, so keep having a wee think about which ones you think win. Maybe start with ones, if you think there's one that's really obvious and you know well, start with that one. We've got a couple of changing minds in this chat, so just have a good think about it. Don't worry if you're not sure. Maybe see if you can do the ones you definitely know and then have a guess at the others if you're not sure. Show you the answers in just a second. It's a good thing to start kind of finding out about a bit more about actually, because if you can, and it's really easy, you can have a look online, just Google kind of Scotland in season or United Kingdom in season food, and there's some really great guides online to help you know what foods are in season at the different time of year that you're planning your celebration. So here are the answers. So leeks are actually in season throughout the winter as well, but particularly in spring they're good food because there's not a lot of things come into season in spring. In the summer we have lovely fruit and berries like strawberries. Autumn is the time for apples, and then parsnips are particularly good in the winter. So if you're planning your celebration, so if you're thinking of planning your celebration just now, maybe you're planning a summer celebration. Lots of schools have these end of year celebrations. So strawberries, great, they're in season at this time of year, so they'd be a good thing to include maybe in our celebration. So does anybody else know any other fruits and vegetables that would be in season in the summer at this kind of time of year if we're planning a celebration just now? Someone's mentioned blueberries. Yeah, blueberries are anything pretty much with berry on the end, apart from blackberries. Blackberries are definitely more of an autumn thing or late summer. But yes, lots of berries come into season in the beginning of the summer, particularly things like strawberries, and we have some amazing strawberries in Scotland. Someone's mentioning peas. Yeah, things like peas and really anything kind of salady crops. Lots of those things are coming into season right now. So you can include those in your celebration. And do have a check, think about where things have come from and how things are grown. Local is generally good, but only if the country that it's grown in is suitable for growing it. So if it's something that's maybe actually not that suitable to be grown in Scotland, it might need to be grown in a heated greenhouse, and that uses a lot of energy. So actually for things like that, you might be better off buying them from abroad because even though they have longer food miles, it's actually better to get them from countries where they're naturally grown than to try and grow them in countries like Scotland where you'd have to put them in a heated greenhouse to grow them, which can, let's say, use up a lot more energy. So do think about what it is that you're buying and where you're getting it from. Brilliant. So we're going to have some lovely in-season produce for our celebration. The next things that we mentioned on our One Planet Picnic principles was things that are more organically grown and ethically traded. Now, if we can, let's try and include some foods that are maybe organic or ethically traded, so things like fair trade, because that helps look after the soil that things are grown in and also the people who grow our food. So if you can try and include those kind of options, obviously it will depend on budgets and things, but if you can, do try and include those. Let's have a think about less packaging waste. So we really want to try and reduce our packaging waste where we can. Obviously, it can be very difficult and some of it's unavoidable. It's just trying to do what we can. So we can celebrate fresh produce that comes unpackaged. So lots of fresh produce isn't packaged, and if we can get loose things, that's great. And trying to get kind of unprocessed food, if possible, because often that comes not in plastic packaging. And lots of things, like I say, that will come in packaging. And where we need to use packaging, it's good to try and get packaging that is recyclable. So how do we know if packaging is recyclable? How can you tell? So someone has mentioned maybe it has little symbols on it. Yeah, absolutely. So it should be on the label whether the packaging is recyclable or not. And sometimes you do have to hunt around. It's just in little text rather than symbols, but usually you get a nice symbol to tell you whether it's recyclable or not. So maybe let's try a little quiz because sometimes these symbols can be a bit confusing. And let's see which labels you can identify. So we've got A, B, C, D, E, and F on the screen just now. Again, on your paper or whiteboards or just in class, maybe write down A to F and then write down what you think. Can this be recycled or not? And if you want to do bonus points, maybe not just yes or no, but what does the label actually mean? I'll give you a couple minutes to have a think. And if you're watching the recording, you can always just pause the recording while everyone has a good think about what these symbols mean. See, some of them are a bit more obvious and some of them are a bit more tricky. And often these labels are on food packaging and we're kind of expected just to know what they are. And sometimes you will get a little bit of writing underneath that explains what they are, but sometimes not. So it's good to have a bit of an idea. What do you think? Some good thinking going on. So quite a few saying someone's saying they look that they're all recyclable except maybe for B. Someone's saying, so let's have a look. Someone's saying so far that A can be recycled And yet that's correct. Now, this is still, it can be recycled, but it means it can be recycled by more than about 3/4 of local authorities. So you still do need to check whether your local authority can recycle the material it's made from. Some of these are quite obvious, so pretty much every local authority will recycle things like paper and cardboard. Some things like soft plastics might be a bit more tricky, so do make sure you check. B, we've had a couple people saying maybe you can't recycle. Yeah, B's nice and easy, cannot be recycled, so I'm afraid that has to go in the landfill bin. So where possible, if you can, try and avoid getting food that's packaged in packaging that has that label on it. Sometimes it can't be avoided, totally fine, but try and avoid it where you can. So C. So C does mean that the material can be recycled. It doesn't mean it's been recycled before. So some people think that this means that it's been in this loop already. It's made from recycled material and it can be recycled. It just means it can be recycled. If you see that little symbol with the 3 arrows going round, then that means it can be recycled. So that's quite a good one to go for. Again, you need to check your local authority. What about D? D is an interesting one. You see that on quite a lot of packaging. Any thoughts on D? Oh, interesting. So someone's suggesting maybe D means it's made from recyclable materials. Interesting thoughts. Not quite. So D actually means that the manufacturers have contributed some money towards recycling and recovering packaging, but it doesn't actually tell you whether that packaging is recyclable. So it just tells you what the manufacturers are doing behavior-wise, but it doesn't help you decide if that packaging is recyclable. It's not the most useful symbol, I have to say, because it doesn't help you decide. So that one, generally ignore that one if you see it, because it's not very helpful. Any ideas on E then? Someone saying E is on plastics. Yeah, so E tells you what kind of plastic the item is made from, and that helps you understand how to recycle it. So generally, if you see that little symbol with a 1 or a 2 in it, they're fairly widely recycled, but others vary, and I'm afraid you do need to check with your local authority. It's a bit frustrating that this gets so complicated trying to recycle these things. But yeah, let's say usually 1 and 2 are usually fairly widely recycled. And finally, F. So someone is saying that F is plant waste. So yeah, the little plant gives you a clue. So F is, yeah, it's usually plant waste. Basically means it's a compostable item. So this means that the item can be composted and will break down naturally into the ground. But you do need to have a little check on the packaging. It should tell you whether it can be composted at home or whether it needs what's called industrial composting. So some types of materials, they can be composted, but they have to go to like the council and be in a big hot composter, not just your little back garden compost. So do make sure you read under that label as well. So it can be quite tricky to tell. So do make sure you read the labels on the packaging if you're buying food for your celebration. Try and get some that have particularly A or C on them, and E if you can't avoid the plastics, and F is pretty good as well. Okay, so the last One Planet Picnic principle we're going to have a little look at is trying to reduce food waste. Now, to me, this principle is actually possibly one of the most important and certainly one of the easiest to do. And it's got nothing to do with particularly what food we necessarily buy. It's more to do with what we do with the food and looking after it. And so why is this so important? Well, in the UK, we throw away about 6.4 million tons of food, and that's quite a difficult number to get to grips with, but basically it's a lot. We throw away a lot of our food. And some of this maybe couldn't be eaten, so things like maybe eggshells or banana peels. Like, you can do things with banana peels, but it's not the easiest, and it's quite tricky to do. The things that we tend to think of as inedible, eggshells, banana peels, bits like that you maybe like onion skins, that can't be eaten. But how much of the food that we put in the bin could have been eaten? So maybe it's leftover lunches that we didn't quite get round to eating, or something in the fridge that went off before we managed to eat it. So how much of that food do you think? Do you think it's a quarter of the food that we throw away? Half the food that we throw away? Or 3/4 of the food that we throw away could actually have been eaten if we kind of planned a bit better and taken better care of it? I've got one answer in the chat saying about a quarter. What do you think in your class? Quarter, half, or 3/4? See someone that's already saying a quarter. And someone else saying a half. So the answer is 3/4. So 74% of the food that we throw away could have been eaten. That's a lot of food that's being thrown away that actually is food that we could have eaten. So we could reduce that 6.4 million tons by 3/4. That's a lot of food that we could save if we just think about how to reduce our food waste. So do you guys have any ideas on what we can do to reduce food waste? I've got some top tips for you in just a second to make it nice and simple, but what do you think we could maybe do to try and reduce food waste? So someone in the chat is suggesting make lists, buy what you need only. Yeah, it's a really good plan. It is one of the most dangerous things, I think, to go into a shop, a food shop, without a list and feeling hungry. Because you just start going, oh, I want some of that and some of that and some of that. And particularly with fresh things, you maybe don't plan for what you need or when you're going to eat it. And then it goes off before you've had a chance. So yeah, making a list is a really good plan, particularly for your celebration. So you're planning a celebration, make a list of what food you're going to have and what you need to buy in order to have to make your food. And only make what you're going to eat. Yeah, really good. So if you've got if you're going to plan to make something, think about how much you need to eat, you're going to need to eat, and only make enough for what you actually need, rather than making lots of extras that you then need to think about what you're going to do with. That's some really good ideas. Because it can be quite simple. It just requires a little bit of thought, a little bit of planning and things to try and make sure that we reduce that food waste. Because that is a really great way of making our food better for the planet. Because if we eat less because we're wasting less, if we consume less because we're wasting less, then we need less land to grow the food, less people to produce it who maybe get treated not so well. We can do a lot more to really look after our food system if we're wasting less of our food. And someone mentioning maybe have a way for people to take leftovers home with them. Yeah, brilliant. So if you do end up with a bit extra, because it can be a bit tricky to judge, it's maybe a good idea to have somewhere to take things home at the end of the day. Or another great idea, yeah, try making something out of the extras. So yeah, if you buy a load of strawberries and you don't use them all, maybe you could make some strawberry jam at the end of the day with what's left over. So there's always lots you can do. So my 3 top tips for trying to reduce food waste kind of boil down to 3 things. So plan, protect, and compost. So plan a menu for who's bringing what and how much you need for the people that are coming to your celebration. And as we said before, think about what you're going to do with your leftovers. So make a plan. How many people are coming? Who's bringing what? How much do you need to buy of each thing? And then if you do have leftovers, make a plan ahead. So you can think about your food choices that are maybe things that would be easy to use up at the end, rather than things that will go off quickly or might not be very easy to do anything with at the end of the celebration. Protect your food. Food is a really valuable resource and it deserves being looked after. So make sure your food's kept cool and covered until you're going to eat it. So try and look after it during the actual event, because if it's sat out all day in the heat, you might not be able to reuse it at the end and it might just have to go in the bin. And for any food waste that you do end up with, so maybe there are a few leftovers that you just couldn't quite plan for, or something that you can't really reuse, or any food waste you couldn't avoid, like we mentioned, banana skins and egg shells, try and make sure you've got some composting facilities available, whether it's in your school or that you can get a compost bin from the council, so that you don't end up putting that food waste in a landfill bin, which is the worst place it can go. So plan, protect, and then compost at the end. So that's the food for our celebration. So hopefully we've planned some really tasty food that's in season. It's been ethically traded and well grown. We've reduced our packaging waste and we've reduced our food waste. And we've got some lovely decorations up and everyone's coming and it's all a great plan. So is there anything else you would like to include at your event, at your celebration? So I'll give you some examples that you can maybe choose from. So you don't have to do anything else. You might just choose to have everyone come to your school, and maybe you'll have a bit of an assembly and you'll show your work and you'll have some food. But maybe there's some other things that you would like to do as well as display your work. So yes, someone's saying, yes, swap is a great idea. Yes, swap events, it's a really great opportunity to have a swap event. So end of year, it's really, school uniform time to be swapped over for the next school year. So you could have a uniform swap. You could just have a general clothes swap, books for the summer holidays, toys. You can have a nice big swap event. Now you can do it as a swap, or you could do it as a sale to try and raise some money for your eco work the next year. And someone's saying sales of handmade things. Yeah, if there's crafty things that you do in school, if there's things that you've made during the year, maybe if you're eco work and you've had extra of them, you could maybe sell those and make a bit of money. I've seen schools do great things like make little packages of seeds, or they've grown plants and then they've sold the plants off. They've sold crafty things that they've made. And someone's also mentioned, yeah, crafting and skills workshops. So as well as making things for the event, you can make things at the event. That's a great idea, especially if you've got maybe community members involved who have got special skills. Harness them, maybe go and try and get them involved, get them to teach you how to make something new. You could also have a bake sale. They're great ways to raise some money. You could have competitions at your celebration if you want to have a bit of fun. And sometimes you might want to give things away at the end, stuff to take home. Someone's also mentioned garden tours. That's a brilliant idea. So if you've got a school garden that you're really proud of this year, yeah, absolutely go and create a tour of that as part of your event. That's a brilliant plan. And just remember that whatever it is that you decide to do with your event, whether you're having competitions with prizes, if you're making stuff to take home, if you're selling anything, remember your values for any stuff that you create or you use. So this would be a great so you try and avoid plastic where you can. So if you want to give away like something take home, try and avoid like a plastic bag of sweets. Try and put things maybe in paper bags rather than plastic bags. Just generally try and reduce your plastic wherever you can for things like prizes and stuff to take home. Like I say, it's a really great opportunity for a bit of fundraising for next year's eco work or a big project that you want to do. So today we've learned how to get started with planning a celebration. We've thought about how we can use our values in planning a celebration, and don't forget those 2 or 3 values you wrote down. Any decision you make for your celebration, come back to those, and it makes things really easy to make those decisions and make them good for the planet. And we've talked about a few ways that we can make our celebration better for the planet. Well, we just had one little more example there. So a school giving out paper bags of veg to make soup. Yeah, so if you've grown stuff in your school gardens, maybe that's a good opportunity. If you've got a bit of excess before the summer holidays, give it away at that point. That's a great thing for people to take home. So hopefully we can have celebrations that are really good for our planet. So your next task is to plan a sustainable celebration. So we really hope you feel inspired by today's lesson, and we want you to use what you've learned to plan your sustainable celebration. And we've created a resource to accompany this lesson, and I'm just going to share in the chat. The page that the recording's on also has a resource that's a little celebration planner that can help you to plan your sustainable celebration. And please do send us pictures of your sustainable celebrations. It's really lovely to see them. And do make sure that you say hello and share your work. So please share anything that you do, share a picture of your celebrations on social media, and we'll share all your posts. And we'd also really value your feedback on our live lessons. If you do have time, I'm just going to share a wee link in the chat, also available on the recording page. If you'd like to give us some feedback on this lesson, we'd really find that helpful. And on our next events coming up, so on the 29th of May, we have a meet and greet for our amazing EcoSchools Award winners. And you can register on our EcoSchools training page, so do go and check that out. It's going to be a really amazing thing to see what our EcoSchools Award winners have done this year, so do come along to that. And on the 13th of June, we have a big EcoSchools celebration. So during the week of the 9th to the 13th of June, we'll be announcing the winners of our EcoSchools 30th birthday challenges. And they are still open with exciting prizes to be won. So do go and check out our challenges, and you can also get involved by hosting a celebratory picnic. So that's part of what this lesson is for, is to help you learn how to plan your picnic or your celebration for that week. So if you are part of Eco Schools and you want to celebrate the amazing work you've done this year, do get involved. So go and check out our Eco Schools celebration page for details of how you can register for our assembly on the Friday and lots of information to help you plan your celebration. And do keep an eye on our website. So our live lesson program for next year will be coming soon. So do keep an eye on our website to see what's coming next. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon. That's all from us today. Bye.